I'm your host, Cory Thames, and today I'm really excited to have my friend, my sister, Chicago City Clerk, Anna Valencia. Anna, thanks for joining today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here with my friend to talk all the things.
Okay.
And I'm so excited that you have this platform.
Thank you.
What an amazing way to start 2023.
2023 is my Jordan year, so I figured that this is going to be a good year, new opportunities, new start, and I think that this podcast is a great way to be able to really sit down with leaders that I respect, that have been impactful and influential on me, to really talk about their stories. And so before we get started, I'd be remiss if I didn't give you your flowers, since you are sitting in front of me, in telling how we met. So
we're going to get real deep fast.
We're going to get real deep.
Before you start, I want to say for 23, my word for 23 is joy.
Okay.
Joy in every aspect of my life, professionally, personal, spiritually. And so I'm very excited because you are a joy maker. You're one of my people that bring me joy and elevate me. So thank you for starting out my 23 with joy.
Oh, thanks, sis. I appreciate that. So for those that don't know, we met back in 2012. I was in grad school and I was contemplating whether I was going to apply for the City of Chicago Mayoral Fellowship. And I went ahead and applied. I was nervous as to whether or not I was going to even get in, right? I worked 2 jobs in undergrad, so my GPA wasn't the highest when I was in grad school. Thankfully, the fellowship didn't look at undergrad GPAs because I had a 4.0 my first grad school semester.
Okay.
But you were one of the folks that interviewed me, and even leaving out of the interview, I was like, I probably didn't get this. And I got the call of probably, 3 or 4 weeks later that I got selected. And after I started, maybe about a month in, I had some of the staff, as I was building relationships with some of the staff in the mayor's office, they were like, I don't know what kind of impression you made on her, because she came in this room and she fought for you. She whipped those votes. She dared somebody to say that you are not going to get into this program. So I often credit you because I would not be where I am today without you giving me that opportunity and fighting for me. And I think that's so important for young leaders, particularly young leaders of color, that we continue to fight for each other. We continue to open the door for each other. We continue to show that it doesn't have to be one person in the room. You can allow and pull multiple people in the room, and that in no way, shape, or form impacts you or your ability to thrive or maneuver. And so I want to make sure that I say very publicly, thank you for all that you've done for me.
Well, thank you, Cory. That is so sweet. And I didn't do anything but open a door. And I, just to give some context around this fellowship for those that are listening, when we were looking at this fellowship and resumes, you saw a lot of Princeton, Harvard, Ivy League. And
the reason why I didn't think I would get it.
and that's not taking away from anyone who goes to Ivy League. Like, U of I repping here, I'm a public college kid. But what we also sometimes miss is that we don't want the same of everyone in the room. Yeah. Like the same of everyone doesn't give you different perspectives, doesn't create that magic policy. You need different perspectives, different backgrounds, shaping policy, different ways you look at the world. And when I remember sitting in that room, that conference room, that was like kind of one of the first times I was really challenging. I mean, I've always been someone that speaks up, and when I want something, I go for it.
You don't say.
But I think in that moment, I didn't know. I did know what I was fighting for, but in that moment, I was the first time I saw again, okay, we've got to do better. We can't just say, you're from Harvard and Yale and Princeton, you get in automatically. We've got to look at the whole individual, their whole resume, their interview. And you interviewed so well. And that's why you're doing this podcast. You make people feel at ease. You're super smart. You're an executor. And I knew that you were going to thrive. And even when you started that fellowship, we can talk a little bit about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
That comes up.
Let's talk about it.
And we can talk about it today as well. That comes up like, oh my gosh, do I belong here? Now I got in. Now how do I thrive? How do I make it here? Yeah. How do I stand out in the right way? So I'm so happy you're doing this because there is enough room for us at the table. And, I love cheering you on when I see you do big things.
And
I know
the same goes for me.
I know you cheer me on. So I'm excited for our young professionals to hear this podcast and know we have the same insecurities. We have the same kind of challenges and barriers that a lot of people listening might have had. And so hopefully we can give them some great resources that helped us.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I've loved about you is that you've been so intentional about making sure that we have a seat at the table. And I think that that's been an example that I've taken and executed. And as I build out and have mentees, I'm always saying the same thing. Like when they're like, can I do anything for you? I'm always like, open the door for somebody else. When you have the chance to give somebody else an opportunity or give them that exposure, make sure you do it.
And not just a seat at the table, but power at that table.
Which we will also talk about with you and your career.
Yes, let's do it.
So before we get going, I like to do a round of icebreaker questions.
Okay.
So you just...
Oh, this is going to be at the end. You want to hear the beginning? You know, the icebreaker questions were the toughest one for me to think about when you took your questions. I'm like, okay. All the other ones I feel fine with.
So you give me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Your first concert.
This I cannot think of that far back. I will tell you my best concert.
Okay. I feel like I know who it is, but keep going.
So I hope the Beehive doesn't come after me first.
Oh, it's not Beyonce. Okay.
Listen, when I was first Beyonce, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, I don't know if she's like all that hyped up.
Yeah.
My best friend Cameron Yost, who was like, loves Beyonce. I mean, she is part of the Beehive.
Yeah,
so
I know.
I decided to go to the concert with her, just to be nice.
Yeah.
I show up on the Run tour, her and Jay-Z. Oh my gosh, fire, so good, so incredible. My Gen Z nephew will be like, oh, Aunt Anna, you're so old, like seriously. But loved her concert, and that's one that sticks out. It was like raw. It was entertaining. It was really fun.
I would have been surprised if you said anybody other than Beyonce because I know you love Beyonce now.
I'm so predictable. Yes, now I'm part of the Beehive. I know.
Who's your favorite artist out right now?
Well, Beyonce came out with that Fire album this summer.
Well, she did.
And it came out right in a time that I had a big failure moment, which we'll talk about. And now turns out wasn't failure. It was exactly how God wanted to play out and a lot of growth. But Break My Soul, my daughter and I sang that in the car driving around. And she calls it Breaky Soul. And that was amazing. And then also, I'm a big faith-driven woman. And I do prayer, meditation, and worship every morning. And one of the worship songs I really like by Maverick City Music is Firm Foundation.
Huge Maverick City fan.
And the Firm Foundation, it's really about anchoring yourself and how God anchors you. And so when storms and wind blow, like you're stable, you can't be blown away. So huge into that as well. So I'm giving you some worship and some more Beyonce.
I got you. What's your favorite TV show on right now?
So I don't watch a ton of TV.
Okay.
I can tell you a couple things I've liked watching though recently.
Okay.
If anyone's watched Best Man Holiday, Best Man Final Chapters was really good.
Was really good.
Really good.
We could do a show on just
Oh
that.
my gosh, that was so good. So watch that over the holiday break. I'm also into The Crown.
Okay.
The Crown. I know I'm not a huge not a weirdo royal watcher or whatever, but I thought just like the history of The Crown was like very interesting. So I would say those two probably are the latest things I've watched.
Okay.
And then White Lotus. Everyone was talking about White Lotus. So I watched it.
I have not seen it yet, but I have heard about it.
I was sick in December. I got strep throat twice in December, like lucky me.
Ouch.
So I binged things. And White Lotus actually was pretty good. It was kind of worth the hype.
Okay. Maybe I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Who's a leader that you look up to and why?
Michelle Obama.
Okay. Why?
One, our birthdays are one day apart, so we're Capricorn sisters. I'm reading her second book, and after reading her first book, I felt so many similarities about how she grew up. Very first in her family, go to college, same as me. Struggled with identity issues, imposter syndrome, blazing trails, and women and girls, something very important to her. But I just feel like she says what she means. She's unapologetic about who she is. Yeah. She's very consistent about her values, states her values, and lives out her values, where her actions align with her words. And very high integrity. And I find that very refreshing as a leader. And so she talks about her kitchen table and how important friendships are and having these authentic friendships of trust and vulnerability. And so I've been setting my kitchen table this year very intentionally about who is in my space, who gets my energy and time.
Yes.
So one day I'm manifesting that Michelle Obama sits at my kitchen table.
Well, let's manifestation is real. So,
yes.
so
yes.
You never know. Last question is, what's a mantra that you live by?
So I have a new one that I just wrote at the end of the year. It's lead with heart, rooted firmly in faith, and watch all that is impossible unfold.
I love that.
And one of the reasons I started this new mantra is that, and we know we're going to talk about this, but I ran for statewide office for almost 2 years, and I lost publicly. And sometimes you get afraid of the unknown of what's next in life. And I did a lot of self-reflection and a lot of, looking inward and kind of putting myself back together. And I'm not so nervous about the unfolding any longer.
Yeah.
I think that the unfolding is the beauty of what God is doing for you. So instead of being anxious about the future, I'm just more excited about it unfolding. And as long as I stay steady with who I am, my values, with God, my faith, and lead with my heart, which I tend to do in all things, all is possible. So that's my new mantra.
I need to adopt that mantra too.
Create your own.
So now let's get into the meat of the interview, which I'm really excited about. First question is, and we've had, tons of conversations about family and upbringing. I know your family is a huge anchor for you. Papa Joe is still a union painter. You grew up in Granite City, and your mom she did after school programs. So talk to me about how your parents helped shape who you are, and then ultimately your journey into public service.
So my parents, I always tell them they always are very humble when I praise them, especially when I was on the campaign trail, about just like how they set the foundation and how I am so privileged to have both my parents in my life and to grow up in a household that was full of love. And I can't remember a time that they weren't there for me and gave me my set of values that really have sustained me in this life journey.
Yeah.
And so, I grew up 5 hours south of Chicago, Granite City. It's a very blue-collar town, steel factory. My grandfather actually worked in the steel factory, had about an 8th grade education. My grandmother came from Czechoslovakia and was a baker. My grandfather's family from Mexico. And my dad ended up going into the trade. So he was a union painter for 37 years, just retired in May. So May.
Congrats, Papa Joe.
Yes, he deserves it. He's having a hard time adjusting, I think, him and mom. And my mom worked with a nonprofit for over 20 years. And she actually, at 60, lost her job because of the budget crisis here in Illinois. And seeing her go through all of that was really tough, but also a lot of lessons learned that she shared with me. But my parents, from an early age, really pressed the need to go to college, to have an education. Yeah. My dad always would tell us, too, like, your integrity and character are everything. And it's the one thing in life that people cannot take from you. And so you have to be careful about making sure, again, your actions align with your words. And so I think from very early on, I recognized that need to go to school. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know how I was going to get to college, but I know that I needed to get there. And my parents also, that's where my faith comes from. Every Sunday we went to church and I was like, oh, church again. But, we prayed at dinner, and my dad was very open about, his faith journey and past mistakes he had made, so that my sister and I knew that it was okay if you made mistakes or any failures, because God still loved you and that they still loved us. And they gave everything. They sacrificed their dreams and goals for my sister and I to have the life that we have now and to get to school. I mean, my dad said he was going to sell a kidney to get to college. He didn't have to. But
for the record, I believe that Papa Joe would have sold a kidney.
Seriously. I mean, they sacrificed, and I didn't realize until I got older what it meant. You know, for my dad would work side jobs. So he'd like work all day, go to side jobs that we could have braces. And he actually had a kidney transplant in 2019. And even during his kidney transplant, when he was on dialysis for 3 years, he would wake up at 6 a.m., go in at 7, do his dialysis, go in at 7, come home at noon, do dialysis again, work till 3, come home again, do dialysis, and then again at night. Every day for 3 years. Did not complain, did not miss work. That's what he did to make sure that his family was taken care of. And to me, that's where I get my hard work ethic and making sure that I show up for family and that I am anchored in community, and they do not let my head ever, like, they ground me. I remember they came to my swearing in when I first became clerk, and they didn't really know what it meant to be the city clerk. They didn't really understand politics because they weren't involved ever. And they show up and, you know, Cardinal Supich is there and they're just like, what? They didn't understand until that moment I was taking the oath that like, wow, their daughter did okay.
You did better than okay. So speaking of hard work ethic, let's talk about your career, right? You have had a storied career in government and politics, right? You've ran campaigns. You've served in mayoral administrations. I want to say you were the youngest director of legislative affairs.
Yes, and second woman to ever do that. First woman of color.
Come on.
Yep. Just saying it. Just adding. And 183 years, 185 years of the history of Chicago. Something like that.
And now you are your principal. Now you are city clerk of Chicago. Talk to me about how you got your start in politics.
Well, we were talking about this a little bit earlier about I think people see you and they see you what you look like now and they're like, oh, they've got it together. You know, it's effortless. They have this perfect life. And it doesn't start that way at all.
At all.
At all. Like you really have to like put in the time. And I always tell young people this, you can't skip the process and just go from, oh, I'm graduating college. I'm just going to be like, you know, city clerk the next day. It just
and you really don't want to.
You don't
right?
want
like,
to. No, there's so much growth in between.
I saw a video on Instagram recently where they talked about the dash in between being so important. That's where so much life and experience happen in that dash between the start and, you know, when you've reached your epitome of where you want to be, right? And so I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No, you're not. Those stories in between that experience helps you craft better legislation, better policies, helps you understand, it helps you lead people better because you can empathize with them. So I started out very early on. The importance of internships is really important. And going into my senior year of college, I had an opportunity to work on a local judge's race. And it was down in my home county. And I did everything from walking door to door to like fundraising to mailing out letters, whatever was needed, arranging parades, whatever we had to do. And I went back to college and I loved that experience. I didn't even know like working on a campaign was something people get paid for. It was like a thing you did. And I was going to go to law school. So I took the LSAT and I think I was going to go to law school because my dad thought either being a doctor or a lawyer meant success because money. And growing up in Granite City, you didn't see a lot of people go away to college. All you saw was like the people with the big houses and swimming pools were like usually a lawyer or a doctor. So that's what I thought I wanted to do. And then I got to mid-year and I took the LSAT and I was about to apply and I didn't want to go. And so that year, senior year of college, I was going to study abroad. I studied abroad in Spain. So I was going to actually go back abroad and teach English abroad. So about January, I got my certification to do that.
I never knew that.
Yeah. So if people are freaking out and you're a senior in college, it's okay to not have it all figured out because I'm a senior in college at this time and I had 2 different ideas for a career and it's January and I'm going to graduate in May. Then in April, I got an interview from that internship. My campaign manager was then working for Barack Obama, the U.S. Senator. And he said, hey, you know, my boss is going to run for president. Why don't you interview to be an organizer? So I went to the interview. I bought my first Express suit from Express, which is still around. And I went and it was a Starbucks and I was so nervous. I interviewed and I didn't get it. So again, like there's my first, I didn't get what I wanted and I had no idea what I was going to do. But then a friend of mine sent my resume to Virginia and the state party called me. They have elections and off cycle and said, hey, do you want to be an organizer? I'm like, I don't know what that means, but does it pay? They said yes. So 2 weeks after college, I bought a car, moved across country, lived in volunteer housing, made $1,800 a month. Couldn't even probably pay my car insurance or my student loans, and knocked doors 7 days a week. I had no days off and had to knock in this western part of Virginia where they would call you baby killer because they were like, you know, I was a Democrat and they had Confederate flags on their houses. So that was fun. But it really shaped me into understanding, well, first, hard work. But second, this whole other world of politics, I had no idea. And then from there, I went to Michigan and was a field director at 23 and managed a 13-person field staff. And
that's amazing.
He's now the U.S. Senator of Michigan, but I was on his first campaign for Congress and came back to Illinois and worked for Congressman Mike Quigley on his special election. Then ended up with the Senate Democrats. And at I think I was 25, and they asked me to be the political director or the deputy political director for the Senate Democrats, where I was in charge of all the state Senate races outside of Chicago and to hold on the majority during a census year and the remap, which was really scary.
I could imagine.
Woo! And I worked with all men, all white men. And I was very intimidated because I was 25. And but I put in the work. And that's after that cycle is when I moved to Chicago and worked for Ram. I was his field director at 26. And again, everyone was older than me at the table, but you just keep building an experience and networking and God places you in the right spot at the right time. I'm a real big believer. And then you got to show up and do the rest.